Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the history of silk, the fabric that quite literally stitched the ancient world together. We're talking about a story that spans thousands of years, entirely driven by humanity's absolute, undeniable obsession with just one single extraordinary material. Picture this for a second. Imagine a material so unbelievably precious that ancient kings were willing to trade away their biggest military assets, like their absolute finest horses, just to get a hold of a few yards of it. People were crossing these brutal, unforgiving deserts where entire caravans would just vanish beneath the sand for a chance to buy it. And the craziest part? The people paying a fortune for it had absolutely no idea where it came from. The origins were totally locked away behind imperial walls of silence.
So, what was this mystery item? Well, the shocking truth is that this incredible treasure wasn't gold, it wasn't silver, and it definitely wasn't diamonds. It was cloth, a fabric so incredibly light and smooth that you could literally pull an entire garment through a wedding ring. And the whole thing was spun by a tiny, unassuming insect. Just a little caterpillar, no bigger than your thumb.
Section 1. The world's greatest secret. To figure out how this all happened, let's head back to around 2700 BCE with the legendary Chinese Empress Lei Zhu. As the story goes, she was just sitting there enjoying a hot cup of tea under a mulberry tree when a little white cocoon dropped right into her cup. The heat of the tea loosened it up, and as she pulled it out, she unraveled this impossibly fine, unbroken thread. Boom, a total miracle that would end up changing civilization.
And this perfectly captures the massive disconnect between the East and the West at the time. When tiny scraps of this shimmering fabric finally made it to foreigners, they completely lost their minds trying to explain it. They're making up wild theories, right? Like, oh, silk grows on enchanted trees, or it's spun by giant spiders, or maybe it's combed from the fleece of some strange white animal. Meanwhile, the reality? Just a delicate little caterpillar, quietly munching away on some mulberry leaves.
But let's be clear, producing silk was definitely not magic. It took an astonishing amount of patience and really intense labor. First, you've got to raise the silkworms, then constantly gather fresh leaves to feed them, keep them warm, and then, this is the tricky part, carefully unwind the cocoons without snapping a thread that is literally a kilometer long. Then you twist the yarn and finally weave it. This is why silk was such a massive deal. It wasn't just clothing, it represented thousands of hours of painstaking human labor. It was the ultimate flex of status, authority, and divine favor.
The Chinese emperors were smart. They instantly realized they had a total monopoly on something no other civilization on Earth could make. So they set up what was basically a ruthless, ancient form of corporate security to protect sericulture, which is just the fancy term for making silk. And they were not messing around. Sharing the methods or smuggling eggs was literally punishable by death. That intense, bloody secrecy is exactly what kept their monopoly completely locked down for almost 2,000 years.
Section 2. The Roman Obsession. Okay, so watch what happens when this mystery fabric finally reaches the Mediterranean. It causes an absolute cultural earthquake.
The Romans got so ravenously addicted to silk that it actually caused a political panic. Elite households were fiercely competing for it, and it was draining Roman gold straight to the east. Conservative writers were over there bitterly complaining about moral decay, literally writing that women wearing silk appeared almost naked because the fabric was so incredibly thin and sheer. The Senate even tried to step in and discuss banning it, but the Roman people were like, nope, we are absolutely not giving this up. Just look at this timeline. It is wild to see how this single fabric anchored such massive historical milestones across millennia. From those early legends back in 2700 BCE to opening up actual trade routes in the 2nd century BCE, moving right into international espionage and, as we'll see, even global pandemics. Every single step of the way, this hunger for a piece of cloth was actively driving human history forward.
Section 3. Birth of the Silk Road. Now, all of this insatiable demand gave birth to something totally unprecedented. But it wasn't some nicely paved highway planned by ancient engineers.
No, it was this massive, organic, 7,000-kilometer web of incredibly dangerous, interconnected dirt trails. And traveling this road was seriously perilous. You've got caravans facing brutal weather and ruthless nomadic bandits. But the ultimate boss level was the Taklamakan Desert in western China. I mean, the name itself is a warning. You go in, you do not come out. We're talking about shifting dunes that could literally swallow entire expeditions in the blink of an eye, burying them for centuries. But merchants still risk it all, hopping from one oasis to the next just because the profits were astronomically high.
But here's the real takeaway. The reward for all that immense risk was basically humanity's first version of the internet. Sure, they traded physical stuff, silk, Roman glass, huge Central Asian horses, but the thing that actually changed the world was the exchange of ideas. You had monks and scholars traveling right alongside the merchants, spreading Buddhism and Islam across continents. Game-changing tech like Chinese papermaking traveled west and eventually helped fuel the scientific revolution in Europe. The Silk Road became the greatest classroom in human civilization.
Section 4. Ideas, Wealth, and Disease. But listen, connecting the world means connecting its vulnerabilities too. The exact same networks that brought all that wealth and knowledge also opened the door to some unprecedented dangers.
Because right alongside the wealth and the beauty traveled a silent, totally invisible passenger. In fact, the deadliest thing ever carried along the Silk Road couldn't even be seen. As these bustling caravan cities popped up, bringing together travelers from all over the known world to eat and sleep under the exact same roofs, they accidentally built a massive international highway for epidemics.
We're talking about infected fleas and rats hitching a ride on these ancient trade routes. This directly sparked the Black Death in the 14th century, which wiped out a staggering 50% of the population in some parts of Europe. It's a pretty devastating reminder that rapid, long-distance connection always brings some really severe, uncontrollable consequences with it.
Yet, incredibly, even a plague couldn't kill the demand for silk. People were still going to extreme lengths for it. Take the 6th century, for example. The Byzantine Empire was completely sick of paying massive markups, so they pulled off what has to be one of the greatest heists in history. 2 monks actually smuggled live silkworm eggs out of Asia by hiding them inside hollowed-out bamboo walking staffs. They literally walked them all the way back to Constantinople. And just like that, China's 2,000-year-old monopoly vanished overnight.
Section 5. The thread that changed history. So, the monopoly is broken, and the world steps into a totally new era. The Islamic caliphates and later the massive Mongol Empire stepped up to stabilize these routes, ushering in this golden age of international trade where commerce just completely exploded across Eurasia. Meanwhile, back in China, even though the big secret was out, they were still the undisputed masters of the game. During the Tang Dynasty, their capital turned into this wildly cosmopolitan hub of foreign influence. And by the time we hit the Song Dynasty, they had essentially kick-started an early industrial economy. They're developing mechanized looms, setting up these massive urban manufacturing districts, and the whole operation was being fueled by paper money. They were literally centuries ahead of everyone else. But as we know, things change. The overland Silk Road eventually started to fade. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople, which was a huge vital gateway. With those overland routes suddenly blocked by a powerful rival, taxes went through the roof. Europe had no choice but to look for a direct sea route to get their hands on the wealth of Asia. That massive push to the oceans is what sparked the Age of Discovery. And just like that, global trade shifted from camel caravans straight to wooden ships. But if you think silk's influence stopped at the edge of the ocean, you are very mistaken. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. Weaving those super intricate silk patterns required mind-boggling precision. So, in the early 19th century, someone invented the jacquard loom. It used these stiff, punched cards to automatically control the complex silk patterns. And guess what? Those exact same punch cards directly inspired the early pioneers of modern computing. The mechanical demands of making silk literally laid the groundwork for the digital age we live in today. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one thought to chew on.
Did the Silk Road ever actually end? When you think about it, from ancient luxury markets to the spread of global religions, from sparking the age of discovery to literally inspiring modern computers, our hyper-connected, globalized world isn't really a new invention at all. It's just the final product of a single continuous thread spun by a tiny caterpillar thousands of years ago. Pretty wild, right?